Well, I think that climate change is the most difficult challenge to face, but probably the most important one.
The only time I saw snow was when I was in primary school, so up until I was 12 maybe.
And nowadays we have maybe 1 day of snow every 3 years, and it's a big thing, and everyone's like, oh my God, it's snowing, which is very different from when I was young and also from what I hear from my parents.
We have a cherry tree in the garden, and we were given that date in the mid-July that we could pick up the cherries. And every year it becomes later and later and we have fewer and fewer cherries.
There's been, over the last couple of years, a lot of signs of the impending climate crisis in the UK. We're seeing a real rise in temperatures during the summer, and it's just happening at a speed at which the government and people just aren't able to cope with. Our houses aren't built to keep out heat.
I can see some changes in climate in my region. Sicily is becoming drier and drier, with water supplies becoming smaller and smaller.
In my hometown yesterday, the river flooded and it destroyed a village. And that kind of reminded me of Iron Dam, and because we visited it the day before, I thought that that was kind of a weird coincidence. And it flooded because we had heavy rain the past weeks, and also the snow in the mountains is melting really fast.
There's many ways that I try to be sustainable in my personal life, in my lifestyle. One of those is cycling over driving.
When I go to the supermarket, I take my own tote bag instead of buying a plastic one.
I try to, first of all, inform myself and be aware about my action. In Czech, we don't need a car. We have a great program of bike sharing. In my city, we have 1 hour every day for free.
I was very impressed that in this city, first of all, it's very flat. I live in Lisbon and it's called the City of the Seven Hills. Cycling everywhere in a very flat city, that was really interesting for me. Because in Portugal, we don't cycle that much unless we are very sporty and adventurous.
My volunteer association, we mostly care of sustainable items, clothes, and so mainly we try to organize some local markets. What we do is that people come with bags of things, but we then select the items.
We constantly think reducing plastic, using different means of transportation, which definitely contribute to having a cleaner and better planet. But the reality is that it is those governmental policies that have the most important effect, and without a strong and determined action by the governments, we're not going to have any kind of transition, and it's not going to be feasible if we do not target those massive companies.
The most difficult challenge is not the electric car, is the knowledge of the people. Because, for example, in my country, the mentality is very old, is too old.
I think that one of my biggest fears for the future of sustainability is the way that the environment comes under threat by a capitalist ideology and huge multinational corporations that capitalize on natural commodities rather than respecting them as people's right to have access to them. Government and government policies have a huge role in this.
I think one of the biggest challenges is to include in every policy that it is taken the economic part. We have to restructure and rethink what is economic growth, and if it's needed, or if maybe economic degrowth is needed, since this economic trend is bringing us to this temperature.
The biggest problem is to make governments from different countries work together. We can be sustainable here, but for example, in China or in Russia, they don't follow our rules, and I think it's really important to work together as one world.
One of the things that is very important is solidarity. Like, everyone needs to do it to get to get the good result.
I think that also people need to be concerned about the importance of their own decisions.
We have this trend of fast fashion and of being updated with everything. So I think we need to be more conscious, and education is a way of helping people know more about it.
With public transport, I think, especially Friuli Venezia Giulia has an admirable system of public transport, but perhaps for me it's also the accessibility to that public transport. In Spain, for example, now they are implementing free public transport for young students. Mostly it's anyone under 30 can get public transport in big cities in my region.
I think the government should maybe implement better policies or ways to make it easier for people to choose a public transportation instead of a private means of transportation.
In California, a lot of people previously had gardens and yards that were not sustainable because we live in an area where there's huge problems of drought. But people would have yards with a bunch of green grass that's not natural to the area and takes a lot of water resources. And when the government started to promote that people should change their gardens towards something more sustainable with, for example, like cacti and succulents, people started to follow this change. And it's had a really positive impact on the environment because it's much more sustainable. I think that's something nice also about Friuli Venezia Giulia, that you see a lot of the local plant species and varieties are being preserved.
What I've noticed a lot happening in the Netherlands is that, especially in public places, very often you don't get a cup anymore, like one of the disposable ones, but you either have to bring your own cup or you have to pay extra to get one from them. And I think that's a really good way to kind of reduce waste, but also you could reduce on dishes and then water, because especially you drink a lot of coffee here. And in the Netherlands, it's very common to have to bring your own cup.
Romania right now, it's trying to increase the renewable sources of energy from the wind and solar panels. And I think they are on the right path into the green energy.
It doesn't matter if it's just a small group of people that does it, but I think if one does it and you can maybe help somebody to understand why it's important, because I don't know how our kids would survive if we don't do it.
In my opinion, the biggest challenge to achieve a sustainable future is choosing the right politicians, because unfortunately politicians that are not interested in sustainability or the environment are the ones that are most supported by big companies, like oil companies, for example. And we shouldn't think that, oh, the next generation will take care of this. The problem already started 2 generations ago, so now is already too late.